Michael Cohen just wrapping up his fourth and final hearing before Congress. Cohen today spending another 8 hours behind closed doors with the House Intelligence Committee.
The hearings went very, very well. I believe that all of the members were satisfied with the statements and the responses that I gave to them. I told them that any additional information that they would want, they should feel comfortable to reach out to my counsel, and I would continue to cooperate to the fullest extent of my capabilities.
The top Democrat on the committee, for one, seemed to be satisfied with what he heard.
He answered every question that was put to him by members of both parties. He was fully cooperative with the committee. We had requested documents of Mr. Cohen. He has provided additional documents to the committee. There may be additional documents that he still has to offer, and his cooperation with our committee continues.
What more could Cohen know that we don't? All right, so that raises a very important and significant question. In addition, though, to additional documents and the willingness to provide even more, Cohen also today provided the copy of his testimony to Congress in which he lied about the timing of Trump Tower Moscow negotiations. Now, the copy he provided today is the one marked up by President Trump's attorneys. Now, we do not know exactly what they changed. We do know that Cohen says the edits were made to fit the president's Russia narrative.
He doesn't give you questions. He doesn't give you orders. He speaks in a code, and I understand the code because I've been around him for a decade.
Code, perhaps not a direct change. Well, now, Cohen's lawyer, Lanny Davis, is admitting tonight that Cohen himself wrote the false statement saying the Trump Tower Moscow negotiations ended before the primaries instead of going through the election, as Rudy Giuliani has stated. Okay, so they're saying Cohen put that line in himself. But Cohen is also saying tonight that Ivanka Trump's lawyer signed off on the testimony with that lie in it, which could be a major development.
Who were the family members that you briefed on the Trump Tower Moscow project?
Don Trump Jr. and Ivanka Trump.
Okay. Now, were these in the regular course of business, or did the president or family request the briefings?
This is the regular course of business.
Do you recall, there's a question on the number of briefings. Do you recall how many there might have been?
I'm sorry, sir?
Do you recall how many of these briefings there might have been?
Approximately 10 in total.
That's a lot of briefings, and it's not something you forget about a project that would have been hugely significant for the Trump organization. So if Cohen's version is true, he put in the wrong date under pressure from Team Trump to tote a false narrative on links to Russia. And Ivanka Trump's lawyer signed off on something that was false. Could that be at least obstruction of justice? Evan Perez is out front on Capitol Hill. And Evan, this obviously could be very significant if Ivanka Trump's lawyer signed off on the testimony knowing it was false, if she'd really been briefed 10 times about such an important project.
That's right, Aaron. Look, if you knowingly help someone lie to Congress, then you also could be in trouble. And what Michael Cohen is doing here is not only implicating Jay Sekulow, who is one of the president's attorneys, but Abby Lowell, who represents Jared and Ivanka, as well as Alan Garten and Alan Futerfast. Now, these are two Trump Organization attorneys. At the time, if you remember, the president and Michael Cohen were part of a joint defense agreement. And so it wasn't unusual for everyone to be sharing information. Now, the question is, what were those edits? According to Michael Cohen and the documents that he provided, he says that they changed, that they made some changes to the document that he was submitting, which was his false testimony. This is why one of the reasons why he's going to prison in May. He is admitted to lying to Congress. So the question is, how substantive were those changes that were made? Now, we have heard from Jay Sekulow, who last week commented on Michael Cohen's testimony, and he said that any suggestion that the president's attorneys were part of making changes to lie to Congress is categorically false. So the question is now, what are Democrats going to do about this? Is this something that the committee is going to investigate further, and perhaps even prosecutors in the Southern District of New York who have been looking at this, according to Michael Cohen?
All right. Thank you very much, Eva. And obviously significant developments as all this information keeps coming in. And I want to go now to David Gergen, Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security, and Harry Sandick, former Assistant U.S. Attorney for the Southern District here in New York. So, Harry, let's start with this. There's a question of who's telling the truth, what the documents are going to show, and the information. However, if Michael Cohen is right, he briefed Ivanka Trump 10 times, and she knew full well that those negotiations of what would have been a crucial project for this family and this company were going on well for the election. She knew then that that date that was in there was a lie. Her lawyer signed off on it. What could that mean?
Well, if the lawyer signed off on it after, essentially taking it back to his client, to Ivanka Trump, and said, is this accurate? Do you have any corrections? And she said, no, it looks good. It could well be obstruction. The concern I would have as a prosecutor is this Ivanka essentially saying, look, if that's what Michael Cohen remembers, I don't have any firsthand basis to challenge it. Everything I've learned about this is from Cohen, and so therefore not commenting on it? Or is it not commenting on it knowing full well that it's false and hoping that the false statement gets accepted as true by others?
Right. And of course, we don't know, Juliet. Again, we know based on Michael Cohen. And look, this is based on various people. But he's saying he briefed her and her brother 10 times. Those briefings obviously continued well into the election. So when she saw a date saying this ended before the primaries, she would have known that was a lie, right?
That's exactly right. So you have to put sort of the testimony about the piece of paper and changes to the piece of paper. What he also testified to was that these ongoing meetings about Moscow and the Trump Tower there. Now, whether, and you have to believe at this stage that this was a substantial change. I know we're reporting that we don't know the nature of the changes. I find it very hard to believe that that these House, these House members are coming out saying it was significant, and it's not. They didn't change the word "the" to "than." This is significant, and it goes to the core of hiding the Trump Tower Moscow deal, which is something that if Trump thought he was going to lose the election, he wanted to continue to protect his empire. And that's the thing that he is clearly lying about now.
So David, this is going to get to at the core of this is how exactly this happened. First of all, there's a document now, right, that he has submitted that shows edits, and we don't know what those are. They're significant, they say. We don't know what, but we do know that the specific date lie was inserted by Cohen, signed off by Ivanka Trump's lawyer. When last week Cohen was asked about this, why did you lie? He said it was he felt under immense pressure. He knew what the narrative was supposed to be when it came to the tower in Moscow. But he was very explicit when he said what the president did and didn't do. Here's what he said.
Mr. Trump did not directly tell me to lie to Congress. That's not how he operates. In conversations we had during the campaign, at the same time, I was actively negotiating in Russia for him. He would look me in the eye and tell me there's no Russian business, and then go on to lie to the American people by saying the same thing. In his way, he was telling me to lie. He doesn't give you questions. He doesn't give you orders. He speaks in a code, and I understand the code because I've been around him for a decade.
David, this is, I'm going to ask Carrie the legality of this in a question, but this is obviously the way the president operates, right? John Kelly writes a memo about how the president ordered him, but he said he felt ordered. He wasn't directly ordered, but it was clear it was an order to clear Jared Kushner's security clearance over the concerns of the FBI and intelligence. Jim Comey writes a memo about his interactions with the president, all because they may not know the code, or maybe by that point they do, but they know they're being told to do something even though he's not directly doing it.
Absolutely. I think that on that issue, whether the president uses a code, that he's indirect, but you know exactly what he means when you walk away, I think that's extremely credible. And we've heard it from several people now, most recently Mr. Cohen. And so I think that part of the story is we don't have to question that very much. And he basically understood he was supposed to go in and lie for the president about when these negotiations ended. Yeah. As to the other figures or characters in this story, I must say if it's true that anybody knew other than Cohen that there were lies in that testimony, they're going to be in real trouble. But we should be cautious. We don't have any direct proof yet that anybody else knew. For example, it may well be that Cohen did not tell Ivanka, and that Ivanka did not recognize the date, or it may be that her lawyer didn't bring her the document to have her go over it paragraph by paragraph.
Well, that I suppose would be a separate issue. But I would imagine if the whole thing at this point is the timing of whether you colluded with Russia and a quid pro quo, you've been briefed 10 times and were involved with discussions about Trump Tower Moscow through the election. The first thing you checked for was that date.
I agree with that, but let's say it may well be the president didn't want Ivanka told about some of this stuff. All I'm saying is
But he's
we
saying
don't
he briefed her 10 times, David. I mean, I'm not trying to get in an argument with you, but I mean, I'm saying she knew that those negotiations continued because she was being briefed on them, and she knew that that was something that the president was saying publicly was not happening, right?
Well, you may well be right, but it's also possible that those 10 briefings were earlier. I mean, we just don't know now. I think we're going to be really curious to find out what the members of the committee tell us coming out of there, what they've heard. That's going to tell us a lot about who actually knew. Somebody probably knew beyond Cohen. That somebody is going to be in trouble, but I just don't think we know for sure who that somebody is.